Gender and relationships. So let's take a look at a couple elements we can cover in this section, which would be same-sex relationships, romantic relationships, gender and relationships, and moving beyond stereotypes, what the possibilities are in those particular areas. So looking at same-sex friendships, when we look at those elements, there's this idea that with guys, it's very task-based and activity-oriented, and when women, it's talking all about feelings. And what you find if you're really digging down a little bit deeper is oftentimes there might be conversation going on during activity, but mostly it's about shared interest and shared likes. So if somebody is really into boats, they might have their activities be around boats. So we really see those kinds of elements, or computers, or putting together stereo equipment, or whatever the particular connection is. But also I think societally we've actually created expectations about what's okay and what's not okay. So you might see people that are interacting in a way that might be different, whether they're expressing emotions or feelings and they're a guy, or it's a woman that's being active in what might be typically a male-oriented situation. I think it really does come down to the similarities between the two, where people just really want the same thing. I know oftentimes we talk about, when guys, and I have kind of noticed this, but I think it happens with girls too. So I don't know that it's gender oriented. I think it might be personality oriented. But this idea that they want to fix things for you. I've actually noticed that with females as well. It's an inclination in me. So if I'm in therapy mode, I'm being a therapist at the moment, I'm more listening. And it's more about letting the person express it and figure it out on their own. But sometimes I have been known when I'm around my friends to try to fix the problem. And you almost need to figure out what it is that's going to be the right way to interact with that specific person. Like, what do they want? What do they need? And maybe just asking them, am I just listening for you today? I mean, are we trying to fix this? Or is this just a listening to exercise? Because I think, a person kind of knows how they want to be supported at any given moment. So being kind of clear about that can be helpful. And the book doesn't really talk about different sex relationships, but I remember in previous versions of the textbook that they did talk about that. And this idea of, can there be opposite sex friendships without there being physical interaction? And this idea of friends with benefits and all those elements. So I think that comes into play, but again, I think most of the time it comes down to shared likes or shared interests. And I mean, I think those things can happen. I don't think that they're necessarily going to happen. I don't think if somebody is in an opposite is attracted to the opposite sex and they're having a friendship with someone that's an opposite sex, that it's automatically going to lead to a romantic relationship. But it's certainly a possibility. It's certainly something that to take into consideration. If you're in a relationship with somebody and they spend a lot of time with some of the opposite sex, then oftentimes that will show up as a concern for people. So I think communication and kind of clearing the air and being clear about the expectations can be helpful in those kinds of situations. Another one that the book looks at is this idea of romantic relationships, and there's this focus on being different from each other. Like John Gray talks about men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And I remember picking up that book and only reading it for a short period of time because it it generalized so badly and didn't even recognize that there were other ways a person might be. They said, "Oh, men go into caves, and women," and I'm like, "But I go into caves." And I don't think I made it past the introduction of the textbook or even the first chapter. I think I might have made it there, and I was like, I can't. I'm not going to go on. But there's a whole industry on dating advice and matching you with your perfect person, whether it's eHarmony or Match.com or whatever one of those dating services are, trying to find someone that's going to be a good match for you. It really does come down to commonality and shared interest and, having some element of agreement about how you live life. I think those end up being important elements in developing a romantic relationship. And there is a bias that there's going to be an orientation of a male and a female in a relationship, but there are also same-sex couples, and a lot of the issues that one sex runs into will be run into with the other sex. So that's not, I don't think any of these things that we're looking at are going to be specific. It's more oriented, I think, around personality than it is around whether someone's a same sex or a different sex than their partner. It's just about relationships and people relating to each other. And I think that this idea of gender being socially constructed, it is, the expectations are created. Now I talk about this, I think it's an important element. I think I mentioned it in the beginning of this when we were defining the terms, but a lot of the reasons why things happened the way that they did was because women can have children, and the apparatus to feed babies is attached to the women's bodies. So women in general weren't able to travel very far away from their children. So it left it to a man to be able to go longer distances. And because, again, the mammary glands are attached to the woman, oftentimes she would be stuck at home to take care of children. So some of this stuff was necessitated by just what's happening physically with our bodies and how that needed to be oriented. As time goes by, there's more and more opportunity, and the mammary gland isn't necessary. There's a bottle, and you can feed the baby a bottle and get milk or nourishment in a different way. But a lot of the expectations sort of stayed there, and these ideas about how that's going to happen. So I think some of this came about naturally. Another interesting component that goes along with this is, now there's opportunities about how babies are created, but in the past, when a baby was created, the mother knew that the baby was hers. It was pretty clear because it was in her belly. But there was really not a guarantee who the father was. So sometimes there would be extreme situations taken that would make sure that the baby that was coming out of the mother belonged to the father, especially in like royal situations. I remember when Kate Kate had her baby, that there was somebody that was in the room to prove that the baby coming out was her baby. I don't know that, I'm assuming that there was nobody in the room to make sure that, when it was created, it was that situation, but I think they look like them, so that's helpful. But there really isn't a way for a man to guarantee that the baby is his coming out of the wife, at least before we had things like, genetic testing and things like that, where they could determine who the parentage, what the parent was of each of the children. So that has shifted, but a lot of things, again, the woman staying home, the woman being set aside, not being able to go out in public in some cultures, a lot of that came about based on this need for someone to know that the child that's coming out of the woman's womb is his sire. He sired the child. So yeah, so a lot of this stuff came about for a purpose. It just doesn't make as much sense now because there are other choices and other opportunities that happen now. And gender is just one part of a relationship. So a lot of times, we'll end up making it be more important, but it really is just a segment. It's just a section of what that relationship is put put to. So you can look beyond stereotypes and you can choose. What do you want to keep? And when you buy something, maybe if it looks cheaper, buy the guy's shaving cream or the guy's razor instead of the girl's razor. You can save yourself some money if you uh, are a girl and you want to buy a product that is a guy's. I think you have to worry about, if the scent is going to be pleasant to you. But personally, I actually get headaches from perfumes. So I'll put on a lotion and it's heavily perfumed and it gives me a headache. So I personally would prefer not to have a scent in my lotions and stuff. I want no scent. But most of the time it's going to be scented based on whether you're male or female. So think about those things. What makes sense for me in my life? What should I keep and what shouldn't I keep? Look at media and how genders are portrayed. When we look at music in particular, I pulled up a couple of them because I thought that was interesting to look at lyric, because it's definitely reflective of the way that people are portrayed or how they're viewed. I think in a lot of the rap music, sometimes you might look at the way women are portrayed in that style of music. Not all of it, just some of it is written that way. When you go back to some of the music I know I'm familiar with, like When a Man Loves a Woman, when the lyric says, she can do no wrong, turn his back on his best friend if he puts her down. Or the song Blurred Lines, this idea that, I guess I find it a little bit offensive, just the idea of how women are portrayed. The song Super Freak, just oftentimes women are portrayed as being not a person, but their body and their booty or whatever part of their body that they're focusing on. Look at your own language and the way that you are speaking about the other person. I feel bad about the student that I worked with years ago, and she wanted to be referred to as a male. So I need to change my language to match that desire. Why does it doesn't matter. That's the way that person wants to be portrayed. Why am I holding that back? I'm going to use whatever gender language or non-gender language. When I was growing up, we were going through this big, huge shift of, if you look at, I know Spanish and English do it in particular, but in the absence of a gender, we will fill it in with a male pronoun. So using them and their and those kinds of pronouns that aren't oriented towards a gender is another way of sort of de-genderizing it. A lot of times textbooks that, when as I was growing up, it seems like it happened more in the late 70s, early 80s. You would see actually 80s, because it would be 80s. And they would say she, he/he, or in some places in the textbook they refer to a he, in some places in the textbook they refer to a she. We were encouraged to kind of degenderize our language. So you might refer to someone as a they or their. So, notice maybe you're speaking and you can make decisions about how you want to refer to gender in your language. And then look at your behavior. How are you relating to other people? How are you interpreting a person's behavior? Do you scold them if they don't act the way that you expect them to? Do you, give them a funny look if they're not acting in accordance with whatever gender they've been or sex they've been assigned, and they're behaving in a different way? Look at that and make decisions. Have this thing that has been unconscious and is for so long be more conscious, so that you can make decisions about how you want to act or how you want to be around other people when it comes to gender. All right, thank you.